Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. You don't belong here. The words cracked through the museum atrium loud enough to turn heads, sharp enough to leave a mark. The gala was staged like a kingdom, marble floors polished to a mirror, towering white statues watching from alcoves, chandeliers raining cold light onto tuxedos and satin gowns. Every laugh sounded rehearsed. Every smile looked expensive. Amara Kingsley stood in the center of it, black wrap coat folded over her arm, white dress clean and architectural, hair set in soft waves that framed a face too calm for the moment they were trying to give her. Across from her was Evelyn Whitmore in royal blue and pearls, silver hair pinned high like a crown. Old money moved differently. It didn't hurry. It didn't ask. It declared. Evelyn let her gaze travel over Amara, slow, deliberate, like she was deciding what category to file her into. "This is a donor gala," Evelyn said, voice sweet enough to pass for polite. "Not a place for people who wander in." A tight ripple of laughter moved through the nearest circle of guests. Not the loud kind. The controlled kind. The kind that says, "We know who belongs." Amara raised her invitation between two fingers. "I'm invited," she said, steady. Evelyn didn't even look at the card. She glanced past Amara's shoulder and lifted her chin. "Security." Two men responded, private event security in black suits, one with an earpiece already pressed tight. A museum security supervisor hovered near the entry, watching the crowd more than Amara, as if calculating the PR damage in real time. The closer guard stepped in, hand half raised, not quite touching her, but close enough to signal ownership of the situation. "Ma'am," he began, "we'll need you to come with us." Evelyn sighed theatrically. "Please. Before we have an incident." That was the trick. Make her presence the incident. Then Grant Whitmore slid into view, Evelyn's son, perfectly tailored, cheeks flushed with the confidence of a man who'd never paid for consequences. He carried a glass of red wine like it was a prop. He looked Amara up and down and smiled, amused. "Who's your supervisor?" he asked, loud enough for people behind him to hear. "Catering? Coat check?" More laughter. Phones started rising, 1, 2, 5 screens glowing like tiny spotlights. A woman in a bright yellow gown lifted hers higher than the rest, recording with both hands, mouth open in delighted shock. Amara didn't flinch. She simply let the room show itself. Grant took a step closer, too close, pretending it was accidental. His wrist tipped. Wine spilled in a sudden, heavy sheet across the front of Amara's dress, dark against white, spreading fast, dripping down as if the fabric had been wounded. The smell hit sharp and sweet. The crowd inhaled like one body. Grant blinked, then shrugged. "Oh," he said, smirking. "Oops." Evelyn's lips curved, satisfied. "Clumsy," she murmured, and somehow the word sounded like approval. A few drops hit the marble, tick, tick, small sounds that suddenly felt louder than the music. The guard's hand finally made contact with Amara's arm, firm enough to steer, careful enough to look professional on camera. Amara turned her head slightly and looked at his fingers on her skin. "Remove your hand," she said quietly. The guard hesitated, not because he couldn't, but because he could feel the phones pointed at him. He glanced at the supervisor near the door, then back at Amara. "Ma'am," he tried again, softer, "let's just step aside." "Now," Amara repeated. The supervisor gave a small, warning shake of the head. Don't put your hands on a guest while the whole room is filming. The guard let go. Grant chuckled. Who do you think you are? Amara lifted her eyes to Evelyn. For the first time, Evelyn's expression didn't fully hold. There was a flicker of irritation, uncertainty, because humiliation was supposed to bend Amara into silence. It didn't. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Amara Kingsley. Amara's clutch vibrated once. Then again. She didn't rush. She let the pause stretch until the room could hear its own breathing. Then she slipped her phone out, glanced down, and read the message from counsel. Final signature window closes at 11:59 p.m. Confirm if we proceed. Amara's thumb hovered over the screen. Evelyn stepped in, lowering her voice like that made it respectable. Take your little embarrassment and leave, she said. Before you make this worse. Amara looked at the wine-stained white dress. Then at the phone's recording. Then back at Evelyn, calm as a locked door. Softly, she asked, are you sure you want witnesses for what happens next? The question didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like procedure. Evelyn Whitmore's smile tightened, the pearls at her throat catching the chandelier light like teeth. Around them, the crowd leaned in without stepping closer, bodies angled, eyes bright, phones still raised. The woman in the yellow gown kept recording, her camera locked on Amara's stained dress, waiting for the meltdown that would justify the cruelty. Evelyn gave a soft laugh. Witnesses, she echoed. Darling, you're the one being escorted out. Grant's smirk widened. Just go. Before you embarrass yourself again. Amara didn't look at him. She looked past Evelyn, toward the museum's security supervisor near the entrance, the one who had already calculated what a viral clip would do to a donor gala. Then she looked down at her phone again. Final signature window closes at 11:59 p.m. Confirm if we proceed. The message sat on the screen like a blade on a table. Amara's thumb hovered, then moved, slow, deliberate, typing a single line back. Hold. Do not sign. Stand by for termination notice. She hit send. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse than dramatic. It was decisive. Evelyn saw the motion and narrowed her eyes. Who are you texting? She asked, tone sliding into contempt. Your manager? A few people chuckled. Not as many as before. Because Amara's calm didn't match the role they assigned her. Amara lifted her gaze. I'm requesting the event chair, she said, evenly. And the museum director. Now. The security supervisor blinked. Ma'am. Now, Amara repeated, not louder. Just heavier. The supervisor hesitated, eyes flicking to Evelyn. Evelyn gave a small, dismissive wave, as if granting permission for the staff to do their job. Fine, Evelyn said. Bring whoever you like. It won't change anything. Grant took a step closer, eyes on Amara's phone. Let me see that, he said, reaching. Amara didn't recoil. She didn't flinch. She simply shifted the phone out of reach and met his eyes. Don't, she said. One word. Clean. Final. Grant paused only for a second, but it was enough for the crowd to notice he'd been checked. His grin twitched, offended. You can't talk to me like that, he muttered. Amara's expression didn't change. I just did. Behind them, a server tried to pass with a tray of champagne, then stopped, trapped by the semicircle of spectators. The music in the distance kept playing as if nothing was happening, which somehow made it feel more humiliating, like the room itself refused to acknowledge her as human. Evelyn leaned in, voice low, intimate, vicious. "You're going to leave this gala in disgrace," she whispered. "And no one will remember your name." Amara's eyes drifted to the donor wall, Whitmore glowing in oversized letters. Beneath it, smaller text announced an impending partnership reveal at midnight, something about heritage and progress and vision. The kind of language that sounded righteous until you watched how they treated a person in front of them. Amara exhaled once. Controlled. Then she turned slightly toward the phones filming. "Please keep recording," she said, not to Evelyn, but to the room. "I'd like an accurate record." That did it. A few people shifted uncomfortably. A man in a tux lowered his glass halfway. Someone's laugh died in their throat. Because now it wasn't entertainment. Now it was evidence. Footsteps approached from the far end of the atrium, quick, purposeful, cutting through the crowd. The security supervisor's shoulders straightened like he'd just been summoned by authority he couldn't ignore. A woman in a tailored black suit arrived first, scanning the scene with professional horror. Behind her, a gray-haired man with a museum pin on his lapel hurried in face-tight, eyes already apologizing before he spoke. His gaze landed on Amara. Recognition hit him like a punch. "Miss Kingsley," he said, breath-catching. I didn't know you were here." The room froze. Evelyn turned her head sharply. "Excuse me," she snapped, as if the director had mispronounced a servant's name. Grant's smile faltered, just a fraction. Amara didn't offer comfort. She didn't soften her tone. She simply held her phone at her side and looked at the museum director the way a decision-maker looks at a report. "I'm here," she said, calm as law. "And your donor gala just showed me exactly who you're protecting." Evelyn stepped forward, voice rising. "This is absurd. That woman is trespassing." The museum director didn't even glance at Evelyn. His attention stayed on Amara, focused and frightened, like a man who realized too late which side of the room held the real power. Amara's phone buzzed again. A new message from counsel flashed onto the screen. "Confirmation needed, terminate Whitmore deal?" Amara looked up at Evelyn, blue suit, pearls, certainty. Then she looked at Grant, wine glass, smirk, entitlement. Then she looked at the phones recording everything. And her thumb moved. Yes. Terminate. Effective immediately. The moment Amara hit send, nothing moved. Not the chandeliers. Not the statues. Not the people holding their phones like they were holding their breath. Only the wine on Amara's dress continued to travel slow, dark rivulets tracing down white fabric, turning a designer gala into a crime scene. Evelyn Whitmore stared at Amara's phone as if she could will the message back into the screen. "You're bluffing," Evelyn said, but the confidence had hairline cracks. "You don't have the authority to." Amara's gaze didn't lift. Her phone rang. A single, clean vibration. Then the call banner, CFO, Lena Park. Amara answered without turning away from Evelyn. "Lena," she said. "Proceed." Lena's voice came through, calm and clipped. "Termination notice is drafted. Counsel is sending it to Whitmore Group and the escrow agent. Exclusivity is void. We're pulling our signature authority." A few guests heard the words escrow agent and termination notice and stopped smiling. Grant's face drained of color in real time. "Wait, what is she talking about?" Evelyn snapped, "Give me that phone." She reached. Amara didn't step back. She shifted her shoulder slightly, just enough to deny access, and kept her voice low. "No," she said. Evelyn's hand hovered in the air, suddenly aware of the cameras aimed at her. The woman in the yellow gown held her phone higher, thrilled and terrified all at once. The museum director stepped forward, palms open, pleading without saying the word. "Miss Kingsley," he said softly, "please, if there's been a misunderstanding, we can." Amara turned her head toward him, not fully, just enough to include him in the consequence. "This wasn't a misunderstanding," she replied. "This was a demonstration." The event chair, an anxious woman in black, appeared beside the director, eyes flicking from Amara's stained dress to Evelyn's pearls and back again like she was watching a bridge collapse. "Amara," the chair said, voice shaking with forced friendliness, "we can move you to the VIP lounge, get you." "I'm not hiding," Amara said. 3 words. The room stiffened. Grant tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "This is insane. You're nobody. You're just a guest you humiliated," Amara cut in, still calm. "On camera." Grant's eyes darted to the phones around him. He saw himself in the reflected screens, wine-tipping, smirk-fixed, cruelty-clean and undeniable. Evelyn forced her voice back into its donor register. "We have a partnership announcement at midnight," she said. "You can't sabotage a $7 billion deal because of a spilled drink." Amara finally lifted her gaze slowly until it met Evelyn's. "It wasn't the drink," she said. "It was the belief behind it." Silence pressed in. Amara looked past Evelyn at the security supervisor. The man swallowed hard. "Please," Amara said, evenly, "ask the Whitmores to step away from me." The supervisor hesitated, then caught the museum director's look. A quick nod. A decision. 2 security guards shifted position, not around Amara, but between her and the Whitmores. Evelyn's eyes widened. "You can't be serious." The director's voice tightened. "Mrs. Whitmore, please. Let's speak privately." Evelyn didn't move. Her pride held her in place like nails. Then her own phone buzzed. A text flashed across her screen, bright enough that the people closest could read the first line. "Whitmore Group Banking, urgent, Kingsley Capital terminated exclusivity. Call me now." Evelyn's breath caught. Grant leaned in, reading. "Mom, what does that mean?" Amara watched them process it, not with pleasure, just with certainty. She ended the call with her CFO and slipped her phone back into her clutch as if she'd simply approved a calendar invite. Then she spoke to the director, quiet but absolute. "I'm leaving," she said. "And your institution will decide tonight whether it belongs to the future, or to people like them." Evelyn's lips parted, searching for power in words that no longer worked. Amara took one step back, then another, turning slightly toward the exit. Behind her, the crowd stayed frozen because they could feel it. This wasn't a scene. It was a shift. And as Amara moved toward the doors, Evelyn's voice snapped at her raw now, stripped of polish. "You'll regret this." Amara didn't turn around. She simply paused, just long enough to let the cameras catch her profile, and said, soft as steel, "No." And the museum's grand atrium, so loud a moment ago, fell completely, terrifyingly quiet. The doors to the atrium opened and a blade of winter air cut across Amara's skin. Outside, the city glittered like it didn't care who was humiliated inside a museum. Valets moved with nervous precision. Headlights washed the steps in pale light. and the stain on Amara's white dress, red and unmistakable, caught every beam like a warning flare. Behind her, the gala didn't resume. It couldn't. Not after the room had watched power change hands without a single raised voice. The museum director hurried after her, breathless. "Ms. Kingsley, Amara, please. Let us make this right." Amara didn't stop walking. She held her coat tighter against her arm, not to hide the stain, but to keep her posture clean. "Making it right would have been stopping it," she said, quiet. "Not apologizing after it's recorded." The event chair trotted beside them, eyes darting to the line of phones still filming from the doorway. "We can issue a statement." "We can." "Don't," Amara said. One word. A full stop. A black sedan eased to the curb like it had been waiting all night. The driver stepped out immediately, older, composed, eyes scanning the steps with the calm of someone trained to recognize danger and disrespect as the same thing. "Miss Kingsley," he said, opening the rear door. Amara slid into the car. The door shut, sealing off the noise, the cameras, the breathless panic of people who only respected her now that the director had said her name. Inside, the cabin smelled like clean leather and restraint. Amara finally looked down at the stain again. It had dried at the edges, darker now, like an old bruise. Her phone vibrated. Lena Park, notice delivered. Escrow acknowledged. Whitmore Council requesting emergency call. Amara typed back without hesitation. Amara, decline. Route everything through council. No direct conversation. Another vibration. General Counsel, they're threatening injunction talk, claiming bad faith. Amara's reply was immediate. Amara, let them. Send the footage link as Exhibit A. She stared through the tinted window as the sedan pulled away from the steps. The museum shrank behind them, glowing like a jewel box that had just revealed rot inside its velvet. In the atrium, Evelyn Whitmore was still standing where Amara had left her, only now the crowd wasn't laughing. They were watching her. Evelyn's phone rang again. And again. The screen lit up with names she couldn't ignore: private banker, legal counsel, co-investor, board liaison. Grant hovered close, voice suddenly small. "Mom, tell me you can fix this." Evelyn's lips tightened so hard the color drained from them. She stepped away from the crowd, trying to reclaim privacy, but the phones tracked her like predators. At the same time, the woman in the yellow gown, still buzzing with adrenaline, hit post. A short caption. A shaky clip. The wine spill. The word oops. The museum director saying, "Ms. Kingsley." It uploaded in seconds. And it multiplied. Across the city, across the country, across every feed that loved to fall from grace. Back in the sedan, Amara's phone lit up with a notification from her PR head. "PR, clip is trending. Press is already asking, why did Kingsley Capital walk away?" Amara stared at the question like it was too easy. She didn't want a messy headline. She wanted a clean lesson. Amara, no insults. No mud. We state values and risk. Dignity. Safety. Culture fit. That's it. The car turned onto a quieter street. Streetlights strobed across her face, revealing nothing but control. Then a new message arrived: unknown number, no fluff. Malcolm Pierce, board chair. This is Malcolm Pierce. I chair the museum board. Where are you right now? We need to speak tonight. Amara read it once. Then again. Her thumb hovered over the screen the way it had before, only this time, the decision wasn't about a deal. It was about what she would do with the power she'd just proven she had. She typed a single line. "Amara, send me a location." The sedan stopped beneath a canopy of glass and steel, quiet, unmarked, the kind of entrance that didn't need a sign because the right people already knew it existed. Amara stepped out into air that smelled like rain and money. The red stain on her white dress had dried darker at the edges, like a bruise that refused to fade. She didn't cover it. She wore it the way some people wore medals, proof that something happened, and she didn't break. Upstairs, the elevator opened into a private floor with no reception desk, no waiting line, no friendly smiles. Just a hallway of soft lighting and silence, leading to a conference room wrapped in windows. Malcolm Pierce was already standing when she entered. Late 60s. Gray at the temples. Tailored suit without flash. The kind of man whose calm came from experience, not comfort. On the table in front of him sat a bottle of water, 2 glasses, and a folder thick enough to look like weight. "Miss Kingsley," he said, then corrected himself gently, as if the respect mattered. "Amara. Thank you for coming." Amara didn't sit. She stayed by the window, looking out at the city like she was taking inventory. "You asked where I was," she said. "I'm here. Say what you need to say." Malcolm swallowed. His eyes flicked, once, to the stain on her dress. The smallest tightening in his jaw betrayed how much it bothered him. "I saw the footage," he said. "Every angle. Every word." "And?" Amara asked. "And I'm embarrassed," Malcolm replied, voice low. "Not because it went viral. Because it happened in our building." He opened the folder and slid out a document, letterhead, signatures, legal language stacked like bricks. "The Whitmores are calling it a misunderstanding," he continued. "They're demanding we contain the narrative. They're threatening to pull their funding. They want you to take a call." Amara finally turned from the window. "No," she said. "Simple. Immediate." Malcolm nodded as if he'd expected that. "Then I'll be direct. The museum is a public institution wearing private chains. Donations keep the doors open. The Whitmores think that means they own us." "They don't," Amara replied. Malcolm held her gaze. "They own influence. They own tradition. They own enough board votes to make people afraid." Amara walked to the table and placed her clutch down with quiet precision. "You didn't text me to explain fear," she said. "You texted me because you need leverage." Malcolm's lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't deny it. "Yes," he said. "I need leverage. And I need to know if you're willing to use yours." Amara pulled out her phone and set it face up on the table like an instrument. "My leverage isn't emotional," she said. "It's contractual." Malcolm's eyebrows lifted slightly, permission to proceed. Amara's voice stayed even. Tonight wasn't the first time they behaved like that. It was just the first time someone recorded it with consequences. Malcolm exhaled. "So what do you want?" Amara let the question hang long enough to make it feel expensive. Then she answered, precise as a list read in court. "First," she said, "the museum issues a public apology. Not to me alone. To every person you've allowed to be treated as disposable in that room." Malcolm nodded, already listening. "Second," Amara continued, "the Whitmores are removed from any leadership role connected to this institution, committee seats, event chair privileges, honorary titles. If they want to donate, they do it without access." Malcolm's jaw tightened. "That will start a war." Amara didn't blink. "Good. Wars reveal who was only pretending to be decent." Third, she said, you implement a formal guest and staff conduct policy with enforcement. Not a poster. Not a seminar. A policy with consequences. Malcolm's eyes sharpened. And the fourth? Amara looked down at her phone. A new message had arrived from counsel. Whitmore counsel requesting emergency meeting. Offering personal apology plus restructured terms. Amara tapped the screen once and sent it to archive. No reply. Then she lifted her gaze back to Malcolm. The fourth, she said softly, is you decide what kind of museum you are before midnight. Because I'm not signing anything into a house that protects people like them. Malcolm stared at her for a long beat, then reached into the folder and pulled out another page, one with a different header, a different set of numbers. You were supposed to be announced tonight, he said quietly. Not as a guest. As the anchor partner for the new expansion. He pushed the page toward her. A term sheet. Her name printed cleanly at the top. Amara didn't touch it yet. Malcolm's voice dropped another level. They didn't know. We kept it private at your request. Amara's eyes stayed on the paper, calm and cold. Then they showed you who they are anyway, she said. Malcolm's phone vibrated on the table. He glanced at it, and the color drained from his face. They're here, he murmured. Evelyn and Grant. They're downstairs. Amara finally picked up the term sheet, slowly, deliberately, and folded it once, like she was deciding where to place something valuable. Let them come up, she said. And in the quiet room above the city, the air changed, because now the Whitmores weren't walking into a gala. They were walking into a reckoning. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime that sounded too polite for what walked out. Evelyn Whitmore entered first, still in royal blue, still wearing pearls, but with a stiffness in her shoulders that hadn't been there at the gala. Grant followed a half step behind, jaw tight, eyes darting like he was searching for the exit before the conversation even began. Two security staff stood discreetly near the hallway. Not aggressive. Just present. A quiet message, this isn't your house. Evelyn spotted Amara immediately. For a fraction of a second, her face did what faces do when they meet truth, then she recovered and put the mask back on. Malcolm, Evelyn said, voice brittle with forced warmth. We need to discuss the misunderstanding. Grant tried for a laugh and failed. This is getting blown out of proportion. Amara didn't move from the window. The city lights reflected in the glass behind her, turning her silhouette into something carved and steady. Malcolm Pierce didn't offer them seats. It wasn't a misunderstanding, he said, calm and hard. It was behavior. On camera. In our building. Evelyn's eyes flashed. We have decades of support. And tonight, Malcolm cut in, you used that support as a weapon. Grant's gaze landed on Amara's dress. The dried red stain looked darker under the conference room lights, like it had been branded in. He swallowed. Look, if we offended you, he said, the words tasting unfamiliar, then we can. Amara turned slowly, and the room felt smaller. You didn't offend me, she said. You revealed yourself. Evelyn lifted her chin. You're enjoying this. No, Amara replied. I'm documenting it. Her phone lay face up on the table, silent now, like a gavel after the strike. Evelyn's eyes flicked to Malcolm. Why am I being lectured in a private suite because a guest? A guest? Malcolm echoed, incredulous. Evelyn, do you know who you spilled wine on? Evelyn hesitated. Just long enough. Malcolm's voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. That is Amara Kingsley. CEO of Kingsley Capital. The anchor partner for our expansion. The person whose signature was scheduled to be celebrated at midnight. The words landed like a clean punch. Grant blinked. No. He looked at his mother, confused, then back at Amara. That's not possible. Amara stepped forward one pace, close enough for them to feel her composure as pressure. It's possible, she said. It's done. Evelyn's lips parted, then closed. She recalculated in real time, the way predators do when the prey stands up holding a knife. I don't care what title you have, Evelyn snapped, then softened it instantly, trying to recover control. We can still resolve this privately. A personal apology. A statement. Whatever you want. Grant nodded too quickly. Yeah. We'll fix it. Amara looked at them, really looked. You didn't want privacy when you humiliated me, she said. You wanted an audience. Evelyn's eyes hardened again. So what is this? Revenge? Amara's voice stayed level. This is consequence. Malcolm slid the term sheet across the table, not toward Evelyn, toward Grant. Your $7 billion deal depended on Kingsley Capital's structure, he said. The exclusivity was already terminated. Grant stared at the paper as if it could change if he read it harder. Mom! Evelyn's hand trembled once, barely, but Amara caught it. Evelyn tried one last angle, voice turning cold. You're making enemies. Amara's expression didn't shift. No, she said quietly. You already were. You just didn't know it. Silence stretched. Then Amara reached for the folded term sheet Malcolm had shown her earlier, set it flat on the table, and tapped it once, gentle, final. Here's what happens next, she said. You leave. Council speaks for you. And the museum decides whether it's funded by fear or by integrity. Evelyn stood frozen, throat working, dignity slipping through her fingers. Grant looked like he'd finally understood something he'd never had to learn before. Power doesn't announce itself. It arrives. And it collects. Evelyn's eyes flicked to the windows, to the city below, anything but the paper on the table. Grant's hands were curled into fists at his sides, knuckles whitening, as if anger could reverse a terminated contract. Malcolm Pierce broke the silence first. This conversation is over, he said, and nodded once toward the doorway. Two security staff stepped forward, not rushing, not grabbing, simply occupying space the way authority does when it's done negotiating. Evelyn's chin lifted. You're throwing us out? I'm removing you, Malcolm corrected, voice flat. From this floor, and from influence over this institution until the board votes. Evelyn turned toward Amara, desperation disguised as pride. You're going to burn bridges over a social slight? Amara's expression didn't change. It wasn't social, she said. It was structural. Grant snapped, finally losing control. You want a pound of flesh? Fine. Name your price. Amara's gaze settled on him like a weight. My price, she said quietly, is that you stop thinking dignity is something you can purchase after you violate it. Grant opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Evelyn tried again, voice sharpening. If you walk away, the museum loses millions. Staff lose jobs. Programs shut down. That's on you. Amara didn't flinch at the guilt attempt. She looked at Malcolm instead. Staff shouldn't be held hostage by donors who weaponize money, she said. If the museum collapses without them, it wasn't funded. It was owned. Malcolm's jaw tightened in agreement. He slid his phone out, thumb moving fast. Emergency board meeting, he said into the device. Now. Virtual if needed. All members. Midnight is cancelled. Evelyn stiffened. Midnight is our announcement. Malcolm didn't look at her. Midnight is over. Security opened the door wider. The hallway light spilled in, bright and unforgiving. Evelyn's face hardened as she realized she wasn't regaining control. You think you're changing the world, she hissed at Amara. You're just ruining people's lives. Amara stepped forward one pace, close enough that Evelyn could see there was no thrill in her eyes, only clarity. You ruined your own, Amara said. I'm just not protecting you from the consequences. Grant's voice broke, quieter now, almost boyish. Mom, let's go. Evelyn's pearls rose and fell with a single sharp breath. Then she turned, walking out with rigid elegance that couldn't hide the tremor in her shoulders. Grant followed, eyes down, passing the security staff as if the floor had become unfamiliar under his shoes. When the elevator doors closed behind them, the room exhaled. The event chair, still hovering like a ghost, whispered, "What do we tell the press?" Amara picked up her phone and typed 2 lines, calm as paperwork. Amara, release a statement, we ended negotiations due to conduct and culture risk. Amara, no personal attacks. No shouting. Just facts. She looked at Malcolm. And add this, she said. Tomorrow morning, I'll fund a scholarship program through the museum independent of any donor influence. For students who've been told they don't belong in rooms like that. Malcolm's eyes widened, not at the money, but at the intent. You'd still invest, he said, stunned, after what happened. Amara glanced at the stain on her dress, then back at him. I'm investing in the future, she replied. Not in them. Her phone buzzed again. Lena, the CFO. Lena, Whitmore stock is already dipping. Partners asking if we're reallocating the $7 billion. Amara's reply came without pause. Amara, yes. Redirect to the alternate consortium. Draft terms tonight. Outside the glass, the city kept shining. Inside, the museum's fate hung on a vote. And for the first time, the people who'd built their power on humiliation were the ones waiting quietly, helplessly, to see what the world decided they deserved. By 11:17 p.m., the museum board meeting went live on a secure link. Faces in neat squares, expensive living rooms behind them, a few members still dressed for the gala as if the night hadn't turned into a verdict. Malcolm Pierce sat at the head of the conference table, laptop open, jaw set. Amara sat to his right, posture still, the red stain on her dress visible under the room lights unhidden, undeniable. On the screen, a board member cleared his throat. We're here because of an incident that's circulating. An incident? Malcolm echoed. A public humiliation, recorded in our building. Another member leaned closer to their camera. The Whitmores fund 3 programs. If they pull out. Amara's voice cut in, quiet but clear. Then you replace fear with structure. The room went still again. Even on video, people could feel that tone. No performance, no begging. Malcolm shared his screen. The clip played, Evelyn's line. Grant's smirk. The wine spill. The museum director's frantic recognition. The phone's filming. The silence afterward. When it ended, no one spoke for a beat. Then Amara slid a document forward, already prepared, already clean. A conduct and access policy, she said. Donors donate. They don't command. Security protects guests, not reputations. Violations trigger removal, no exceptions. A board member frowned. And who pays for the gap if the Whitmores retaliate? Amara didn't hesitate. Kingsley Capital will bridge 12 months of funding independent of any family. But only if the policy is adopted tonight and enforced publicly. The word tonight landed like a deadline. Like the old way didn't get to sleep and wake up intact. On screen, someone shifted uncomfortably. That's a significant commitment. It's not charity, Amara replied. It's insurance against your worst instincts. Malcolm watched the squares, then spoke with the calm of a man who'd finally chosen a side. Motion 1, he said. Immediate suspension of Whitmore privileges, committee roles, and event access pending review. A few faces tightened. A few nodded. Vote, Malcolm said. Hands rose. One by one. More yes than no. Motion carries, he said, voice steady. Motion 2, Malcolm continued. Adopt the policy. Publish it. Enforce it. Another vote. Another majority. Amara exhaled once, small, controlled, then texted her CFO. Amara, Bridge Fund approved. Release scholarship details at 9 a.m. Her phone buzzed back almost instantly. Lena, understood. Alternate consortium ready. We can announce new partners tomorrow. At 11:46 p.m., Malcolm drafted the museum statement on the spot, short, factual, coldly professional. No insults. No theatrics. Just accountability. At 11:58 p.m., 1 minute before the old announcement was supposed to happen, Evelyn's name came down from the sponsor wall on the museum's website, replaced with a neutral line, funding under review. Amara stood, slipped her black wrap coat over her shoulders, and looked at the city again. Midnight arrived without fireworks. No champagne toast. No triumphant Whitmore reveal. Just a quiet institutional pivot toward dignity, toward rules, toward consequences that didn't need to shout. And somewhere below, in a different building, a phone kept ringing in Evelyn Whitmore's hand while the world watched her learn what it felt like to be the one locked out. Morning came clean, the way mornings always do, like the world had washed its hands of last night's cruelty. But the internet didn't forget. By 8:06 a.m., the clip had traveled past the usual outrage and into the quieter places that mattered: boardrooms, university offices, investor chats, newsrooms where editors didn't laugh, they measured impact. Headlines avoided the melodrama and still landed like punches. Museum board suspends Whitmore access after Gala incident. Kingsley Capital terminates $7 billion partnership over conduct and culture risk. Inside the museum, staff arrived early, unsure whether they were walking into a crisis or a purge. The lobby smelled faintly of polish and anxiety. Security guards stood straighter than usual. The donor wall screen cycled through the same elegant visuals, but the Whitmore name was gone, replaced by neutral language that felt like an indictment without emotion. At 9 a.m. on the dot, the museum posted a second announcement. Not a celebration. A commitment. A scholarship fund, seated and guaranteed for 12 months, independent of donor influence. Funds for internships, tuition support, and paid placements in curation and conservation. A pipeline for students who'd been told, in rooms like that atrium, that they were lucky to be allowed near the door. Amara Kingsley didn't appear in a glamorous photo op. No staged smile. No victory pose. She arrived through a side entrance in a simple black coat, hair pulled back, face calm. The wine-stained white dress was gone, but the mark it left had moved into the building's bones. Malcolm Pierce met her at the corridor leading to the staff offices. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, but for the first time, his exhaustion had direction. "They're furious," he said, low. "The Whitmores. Their counsel called at dawn. They want meetings. They want repairs. Amara didn't slow. Repairs aren't apologies, she said. And apologies aren't policy. They passed a group of junior staff, young, diverse, eyes wide with the kind of cautious hope people learn only after being disappointed enough times to fear believing. One of them, a young black woman with a lanyard still stiff from being new, stared at Amara as if trying to confirm she was real. Amara stopped. Not to perform. To acknowledge. You work here? She asked gently. The woman nodded. Yes, ma'am. Archives. Amara's gaze softened just enough to be human. Good, she said. You belong here. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They slid into the hallway like warmth. On the other side of town, Evelyn Whitmore sat in a private office that suddenly felt too small. Her phone buzzed without mercy. Partners, bankers, trustees, friends who spoke in careful tones that sounded like distance. Grant hovered near the window, eyes swollen from a night spent refreshing feeds that didn't forgive him. We can sue, he muttered, desperate. We can threaten. Evelyn looked at him, and something ugly and terrified flickered behind her eyes. For what? She snapped. For being seen? Grant's mouth opened, then closed. He finally understood the thing he'd never been forced to learn. The cameras hadn't framed him unfairly. They'd framed him accurately. Back at Kingsley Capital, Amara's counsel sent the final termination packet, clean, brutal, professional. No insults. No emotional language. Just dates, clauses, and consequences, executed the way power is supposed to be, quietly, correctly, and without needing to explain itself to anyone who already knows. By noon, a student across the city, first generation, working 2 jobs, read the museum's scholarship announcement on an old phone with a cracked screen. They stared at the words like they were a doorway finally opening. They didn't know Amara's full story. They didn't need to. Because the point wasn't to worship her. The point was that someone with power had looked at humiliation and refused to call it normal. That evening, the museum's grand atrium stood empty, marble silent, statues unmoved, chandeliers shining on nothing at all. It looked the same as it always had. But it wasn't. Because now the building had rules that didn't bend for pearls. And somewhere in the city, Amara Kingsley walked into another room, calm, composed, unafraid, carrying the kind of justice that doesn't scream. It simply arrives. And it changes what the room is allowed to be.